Hello and welcome. My name is Lynn, and today I am going to be creating two squash books. So you may have already heard about this style of mini album because it's been around for a while, but I don't know where I've been. I've only just recently discovered this. So what I'll do is I'm crafting with the Let It Snow collection, which is currently still available. It's actually on clearance, and they just clearanced it down, discounted it even more. So definitely check it out from the Graphic 45 shop if you are interested in these papers. And I am kind of mixing between the patterns and solids, which are the patterns that I've mostly chosen as my page bases. I've cut those to 8.5 by 8.5, and that's so that if you don't have 12 by 12 papers and you want to use maybe some solid color cardstock, but you only have US letter size, you can still make this size album. So I am going to make two squash books because the Let It Snow collection is really wonderful in that there are some different shades of blue, which are great for just more wintry effect. And then there are some reds and greens that are more in line with your traditional Christmas colors. The entire collection is Christmas themed, but I just love that there's sort of the two different colorways. And so I'm making sort of similar to when I made the center stepper card. I'm making one squash book that's more wintry feeling and the other more traditional Christmas. For each of them, I've cut 3 8.5 square panels, and I'm scoring along that 8.5 edge at 4.25, so directly in half. I'm gonna rotate and score again at 4.25. So those orthogonal score lines are going to essentially divide this sheet in 4 quadrants. And if you like to score the way that I do, where you fold your score lines as mountain folds, those orthogonal lines you want to score for your odd numbered pages on the back. And this diagonal score line where I'm just lining up 2 corners on, well, this is my cutting track, but I'm going to use it as a scoring track. And that should be scored for your odd numbered pages on the front of your page base. For your even numbered pages, you want to do the reverse. The diagonal line should be on the front. The orthogonal lines should be on the, reverse that. So for your even pages, your orthogonal lines should be on the front and your diagonal line should be on the back. So that way, whenever you do your folding, it is going to maintain the strength of the papers, because when you put a score line into your paper, basically what you're doing is you're stretching and breaking down those paper fibers. And when they're already stretched in that direction, in the direction of your indentation, when you fold it and that paper has to bend, it's already a little bit broken down. The paper fibers are already softened a little bit, so that when you fold and bend that paper along that fold, it will stay strong and won't crack, or at least has less of a chance of cracking your paper. So once you have everything scored, folded, and burnished, everything folds down into just one of these little quadrants. Look at that. And so that's why it's called a squash book, because you can really, this huge 8.5 by 8.5 sheet squashes down to just 1/4 of the size. And that is thanks to those diagonal score lines and folds that we put in. So I like to keep these relatively small to 3 pages, but you can definitely continue to add on more And that's why when I was giving you the scoring suggestions, that's why I say even versus odd pages, because you basically just need to alternate, because the folds need to fold in on themselves in that alternating pattern. So on your odd numbered pages, the orthogonal lines will be scored from the back and the diagonal line on the front. And you just need to reverse that when you are scoring for your even pages. And so that just keeps everything so that it's really easy to then collapse down your these page bases so that it all folds into this tiny little square. And I think this size album is really great for a brag book, because you can fit maybe a handful or so of photos and very compactly, because at the end of the day, this will fold down. What the page bases will fold down to 4 1/4 by 4 1/4, but I'll be adding some covers to this, which you'll see later in the video, and that will take it to 4 1/2 by 4 1/2. But that's still pretty tiny, and it still will pack a punch, because once you open it up, you get to see that full 8 1/2 by 8 1/2, which I think is kind of fun. So I have all of my page bases ready, and now I'll show you how to attach these, because there isn't a separate binding that you need to create for your to sort of attach your page bases into the book. Basically, what you'll do is glue your pages together on one of these solid squares, one of these quadrants. And this is one of the quadrants that does not have a diagonal line scored through it. So I'm just going to put some double-sided strong adhesive tape. I like to use score tape because I know it's very strong. And along the outside edges, the two outside edges, I'm trying to get the score tape as close to the edge as I can. That way, where it might be a little bit more likely to kind of lift along those outer edges, at least I get some adhesive all the way to the edge of that. But when it comes to placing the adhesive along the where the two score lines are in this little quadrant here, I'm staying maybe a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch away. And that's because when I place my second page onto my first page here, lining up the two squares, the two solid squares that don't have a diagonal score line through them, I actually want to place this not so that it butts up against the score line, but maybe about a 1/16 of an inch away from that score line, because the pages need to actually fold down into that space. And so I just want to make sure I'm giving enough clearance so that when everything folds down, it can fold down as flat as possible and not sort of be impeded by this extra layer of cardstock. So I am just going to try to position this as best I can so that it doesn't have to be precise, but just, give yourself a little bit of distance from that score line. It's going to result in your pages being a little bit offset, but not a ton, and it's well worth it if everything folds down nice and flat. So I'll show you that again on the red and green version. So I'm going to put double-sided score tape on the outside edges as close to the edge as possible, but when I place that double-sided adhesive along the stretch that has the score line, I am aiming for maybe about an 1/8 of an inch away from the score line so that I can place my paper just a smidge off of the score line. And the reason why I actually like to use both double-sided adhesive tape and liquid adhesive is because the double-sided adhesive tape is going to give me an instant grab. That way I can kind of continue working on my album without the worry of things shifting a little bit. Also, it does allow me to put adhesive all the way to the edge of the cardstock that's getting attached to this. And that helps to prevent any lifting at the edges, where I think lifting might be the most likely. However, depending on your climate, double-sided adhesive tape can actually dry out. So the more humid of a climate you live in, the higher the potential for your double-sided adhesive to actually dry and maybe lose its stickiness. And liquid PVA glue, like the one that I use, which is from Lineco pH Neutral, it's actually water-based, so it will actually absorb into your papers and create a more permanent bond, and it will be more long-lasting. You want to make sure that whatever PVA glue you use, if you're using it for mini album making, that it's acid-free and archival safe, so that when you place photos onto these pages, they don't yellow over time, which can happen if your glue is not archival safe. So I've already cut down lots of mats and layers, and I've even put together one pocket, but I'll show you on camera how I made that pocket. To cut your mats and layers, you just need, if you want a little bit of your page base to show, and they'll have a little bit of that border showing, what I've used, or what I've cut these down to, is 4 inches square. And here I'm showing you how to get your triangle mats. So you start off with, again, a 4-inch square panel, and then you just cut that along the diagonal, and you have the perfect mat for those triangle sections. Because I don't think you're going to want to put just a solid 4x4 square over that, because there is the fold, and it might start getting a little bit too bulky to fold flatly when you layer right across that fold. So I find things will fold down more neatly if you just decorate those areas where there's that diagonal fold with triangles. And in fact, when I go to attach it, I'm actually going to leave, a little bit of room so that it's not exactly going right up to that fold. Again, that's just so that everything folds down really neatly. And with the 4 sort of sections where you do have that solid flat space, I like to use those sections as sort of my main areas to showcase photos. And so what I'll do, and I'll show this in a little bit, is I'll add some photo corners to those areas so that if I'm gifting this, which I probably will, it's at least very easy to load photos into the album. The gift recipient doesn't have to worry about getting photo corners themselves, or getting photo safe adhesive to glue their photos in. Plus, with the photo corners, if it is a brag book, then you can swap those photos out too if you want to change it out throughout the season. So to stretch some of my pattern papers a little, what I did with this section is I just cut a larger piece of solid color red cardstock at 4x4, because the largest I could get out of my pattern paper didn't quite make it to a 4-inch square section. So that's one way to kind of get the most out of your pattern papers. You can just add some of your own solid color cardstock and make use of those maybe smaller sections. And with this pocket that I'm going to add here, so the unique thing about 4, or at least the triangular sections on your odd numbered pages, because they fold backwards, you can actually attach larger items that span across that diagonal fold, because whatever you put on top there, it doesn't get folded inward. See how that triangle section folds back? So you can take advantage of that fact by adding larger items, and I'll show you my process for decorating this version of the squash book, but I'll just show you the end result of the red version after it's already been complete, because much of it's the same and I create the same style of pocket and everything. So but you'll see what I do differently on some of those triangular sections if you want to actually add more than just the 4 photos. Of course, you can put photos anywhere. I just feel like these triangular sections are kind of hard to sort of trim down a photo to fit. So I like to just use it as just decorative areas. But of course, whoever I give this to, they can bring their own creativity to it and decorate it further if they want, trim down smaller photos if they'd like, and customize it so that it really suits what they want to showcase. So here again, I've just got some triangle sections that I'll add to these. Now these 2 sections, which are the even pages, those fold inwards, so you can't quite use that same trick of being able to attach something that's larger than just that triangle. Whatever you attach to those areas on your even pages, they do need to be confined to just the triangle sections because it does fold in on itself, and so you can't really put anything across the score line or that fold line because it'll get folded too. So here's how to create the pocket. It can really be any size that you want, but I'm starting off with a panel that is 4x4, and then I have the smaller panel that's 2x4, and it's one of the reasons why I changed out to this particular cutting mat is because if I ever don't mention dimensions, hopefully it's easy for you to just count the squares on my mat. So, because that's what I often do when I'm watching other people's videos and they don't mention dimensions, which I sometimes forget to do, and I apologize for that. But if ever that's the case, you can, hopefully it's easier to count, on my grid mat because it's just, like 1-inch spacing. Okay, so I like to attach this bottom section that's going to be our pocket, and that was 2 inches high by 5 inches. Well, the actual, you want to cut it to 2.5 inches by 5 inches and then score 1/2 inch on 3 sides, the 2 sides and the bottom. And I like to attach the bottom first so that I can put a strip of just plain old Scotch tape across that glue tab. And the reason for that is so that when you slip things into this pocket, it won't catch on that little extra bit of cardstock. Instead, it'll just slide down all the way to the bottom much more easily. And then I'll just fold the 2 sides in and glue that down. I decided to round the corners just to make it a little bit different, have it a little bit more neat. And what I totally forgot to do as I was recording was to punch out a little thumb notch on that pocket, which you kind of need to do before you glue it down. At least for the circle punches that I have, I can't fit it into that little area there. So it's not the end of the world, but just having a little thumb notch punched out could make it a little bit easier to pull things in and out of the pocket. And when you go to glue down anything, whether it's a pocket or some embellishment decorations, which you'll see in a little bit, you just want to glue it to half, just one of those triangular sections. That way, the other section, the other half of that quadrant is free to fold down flat behind it. So when you're gluing this, and that's why I put some score tape just right along the that folded diagonal line so that, again, I can get adhesive all the way to the edge, and I know exactly where it needs to go. Whereas if you place adhesive onto your pocket, you might overextend your adhesive and glue it down to that opposite side, which would prevent your squash book from folding correctly, or it'll fold but it'll tear your pocket. Okay, so now with the pages in, the pockets in, you can really start to just decorate all of this however you like. And actually it turned out nice that I didn't punch that little thumb notch, because that Let It Snow die cut from the ephemera pack works great on this size of pocket, and had I punched out a little thumb notch, it wouldn't have fit, actually. So that actually worked out for the best. But I did pull a lot of elements from the ephemera pack because they were just perfect for decorating and just adding these little touches. Now with this clock piece, I did use a circle die to die cut out a circle so that I could actually glue my clock face onto something that was a little bit more solid, so that I can have more paper to attach it to my page base. And this ornament is gorgeous. It's actually from a recent release from Spellbinders, and what I did was die cut it several times. You have one die that cuts out the solid outline of the ornament, and then another die that cuts out all this gorgeous detailing. And I've cut it out of various pattern papers in the collection, and for the central ornament, I die cut it out of the detail version out of vellum, because the pattern paper is what I really want to show off. So I want that to be visible. And I have started to attach these to each other. So I folded them in half, glued the halves together, and now I'll glue it into my squash book, so that this is one of the neat things that you can do about this folded section, where you can't put something larger that you don't intend to fold, but this is designed so that it will fold flat. So so you get all of that awesome dimension of something that sort of pops out a little bit. And I love that it's an ornament, because then you can kind of see all the pretty papers popping out of it, and then it just looks like a 3D ornament. So really fun idea for another way to kind of decorate that section. And you saw a moment ago, I just put some photo corners that I bought. They're nothing special. You don't need a die. You can buy them in large packs. And I have them in black, which you'll see on the red and green version of my squash book. And then I used the version that it's actually clear. The plastic is clear, so when you slip your photo in, you actually won't see anything cover your photo, but behind the piece that actually glues down to your page base is white. So that's why you see the white, but you won't see that once a photo is slipped in. And I just decided to pick out some more of the ephemera pieces and the stickers that came in the collection pack, so that I can kind of make my own little decorative piece here. And this banner is really cool, but what I decided to do is just to cut 2 slits so that it actually looks like it's wrapping around this circular piece here. And so really, really fun to just kind of play with all of the ephemera pieces and the stickers, because you get so much, and it's wonderful to have all of these sentiments. Great for card making, but as you can see here, really great for decorating your mini albums as well. And so this will be another decorative element where I use that trick of just gluing it to half, to one of the triangle sections here, and having it just hang right over. And and that way I can have something that's a little bit larger to decorate that area. So then once you have your album decorated, or you could do this first, up to you, you can make some covers. So I've just cut some, this is 110-pound cover weight black cardstock. You could use chipboard if you want. I feel like with such a small album, chipboard wasn't necessary, especially since I'm going to layer some cardstock onto this. And again, I wanted to try to use all of my scraps before having to cut into larger pieces of pattern paper. And so to extend a little bit, because the piece that I wanted as the prominent pattern, and this is for my back cover, wasn't quite large enough, so I just cut down some strips and lined the four edges with these strips, and that way I can have a little bit of a border around this beautiful pattern, which came from the 12 by 12 patterns and solids. I attached some blue trim from, also from Graphic 45, just right across the center, again with some score tape to make sure that it's strongly held down. And now I'll go ahead and attach this to the back of my book, and I am constantly double checking that I have this oriented the correct way. On the back cover it wasn't so important because the print that I chose isn't very directional. So but I always do like to do that double check, especially on the front cover. And again, because I am trying to kind of use up as many scraps as I can, I am going to sort of collage up my front cover as well. And I attached this to the top of my 4.5 by 4.5 panel here. But then as I was sort of doing a dry run, I changed my mind a little bit, and I wanted that let it snow sentiment to actually be at the bottom. Mostly because this lovely scene with Santa has some really cool, like there's a polar bear at the bottom and I think a white fox at the bottom, and I wanted to show more of them. And if I had arranged it the other way, then I wouldn't have been able to see quite as much of them. So changing things up a little bit, and when you see me add these little sections or blocks of white cardstock, all that is an attempt to level out the layers a little bit as I attach things on top. That way, especially when I burnish, I don't get super harsh lines because of the different layers of cardstock beneath it. So by just adding some scrap paper to the center, you know, best would be if I had covered the entire panel, but I think just a best effort will definitely help to keep everything nice and level. And this little section with Santa here in this scene, I didn't have a large enough section that out of my scraps anyways, that spans the entire width, and so that's why I found this lovely border that I thought would look really nice to stretch across, or up and down, I should say, on both sides of that lovely scene. And here again, I am just going to add some additional strips because at this point, that bottom section where it was just the black cardstock, that's 2 layers of cardstock less than where I need to attach this. And so since this little strip was going to stretch across some portions that are, you know, 2 layers of cardstock deep and a portion that has no cardstock and just the black cover. That's why I decided to add those additional scrap pieces of paper just to level that off a little bit. And again, I'm going to attach this to my album now. So really, really easy album to create because there's no spine, there's no hinge. It's all really, really super simple, pretty fast to put together. Of course, the decorating probably takes the longest part of this, but the actual assembly of the base, album base, is really super simple. So here is a final look at my two albums. Let me show you this one first because I didn't make this one on camera. This is the more traditional red and green version, and on the front there you kind of see how I've just used some strips just to make the most of my leftover scraps. And you can also see how if you want to have more areas for larger photos, you can use these top sections where I've used pockets on the bottom, and above it I've just put a 4x4 panel with some photo corners, and that way you can put photos up there as well. So that's another idea. So if 4 photos just going straight across the center isn't enough, then you can utilize these sections as well, and you can actually fit 4 more. If you didn't need pockets, you could fit 4 more photo mats with photo corners to fit even more in here. So it's a small album, but it can fit quite a lot. And I did decorate those photo mat areas just in case if the recipient of this album doesn't want to put photos there, then it doesn't look quite so plain. It's still at least decorative, and they can leave it like that if they want. But certainly if they have photos that they want to fill into that section, then they can definitely do that. So that's my red and green version of my squash book, and I'll show you again the sort of wintry blue version. And it's just amazing to me that all of the papers are from the same collection, but it's great how different they can look just by choosing, to sort of selectively stay within certain color families within the same collection. Certainly everything works really well across both colors, but I just love that we get that option of sticking to the blues or going with your more traditional reds and greens. And really, really love how this ornament came out. It's really gorgeous. And again, that's from a relatively recent release from Spellbinders, and I'll leave links to everything in the description box below. I also have a squash book tutorial that's on the Graphic 45 YouTube channel, and there I use some different dyes to decorate the inside. So if you're looking for more ideas for how you can decorate these pages, definitely pop on over to the Graphic 45 channel and check out that video as well. I'll link to that in the upper right hand corner, but I'll also add that video to my Graphic 45 playlist where you'll find all of my videos where I feature Graphic 45 products. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. And if you're already a subscriber to my channel, thank you so much. I appreciate you immensely. If you haven't already subscribed, I hope you like this video enough to start subscribing. And until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye!